This episode of EMS One-Stop is brought to you by Lexipol, the experts in policy, training, wellness support and grants assistance for first responders and government leaders. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's lexipol.com. So we're here in Las Vegas, on scene, as they say, at ABC 360 and the XI conference run by Paige Wolfberg and Wirth. And I'm talking to our keynote speaker, Catherine Kuhlmann. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
So a pretty amazing keynote this morning on why, and about customer service and about all the things that we in EMS should be thinking about. But before we get into that, why don't you introduce yourself? And you have an interesting EMS and law background.
So I am a firefighter-paramedic. I've been doing that for 26 years. I used to be an EMS chief for a volunteer agency for 12. I was a justice of the peace court judge for 4. I'm part of the EMS Leaders for STRAC group out of San Antonio in Region 8. I'm part of EMCF 8. I'm a jack of all trades. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I married a first responder. I am a first responder. I raised first responders, and I'm inheriting a daughter-in-law who's a police officer. So I think we're kind of keeping it in the family.
Fair to say it's in the blood then.
It's in the blood.
So your keynote this morning, of course, there's some really valid takeaways for everybody around your why and around, the sort of customer service aspects of doing what we do. So explain your sort of keynote and outline.
So my keynote's about why the why matters and how it affects customer service and healthcare. A lot of times when we think of customers, we think of the people we serve, and we forget that there's an external and an internal customer. And if you don't take care of both customers, no matter what industry, you're going to fail. And we talk about the fatigue of EMS in fire and law enforcement, but a lot of times we just talk about it. We don't try to fix it. Mm-hmm. And if we want to fix it, we lose not only people when they decide that it's not meant for them, and don't get me wrong, sometimes it isn't, but sometimes we lose people not because it's not meant for them, it's that they don't understand the culture or the culture doesn't understand them. So in life, we all have a why. We have a why we get up. We have a why we do things. We have a why we don't do things, why you're here, why you chose not to come, why you chose to come to the keynote, why you didn't sleep in. And that comes down to choice. Mm-hmm. And in life, it's not by happenstance. And a lot of times we think, well, it'll happen. It'll just happen organically, come to me. And sometimes it does. But more often than not, you have to put effort into it. If you want to have a rich, diverse environment that's skilled and knowledgeable and cohesive, you got to feed it. You got to embrace it. You can't just expect it to just be there. And that starts off before you even hire people. You have to have a healthy department in order to continue to be healthy. And a lot of times when people think that they have problems with an individual in their agency, sometimes it's not actually a problem with the individual, it's with the agency. That person is a byproduct of maybe things that maybe administration doesn't actually see. Honestly, if we're going to be honest about all aspects of first responders, most first responders don't quit being first responders because they don't love what they do. They quit being a first responder because of the culture within the station. It's the interaction. And we need to foster a growth pattern in order to not just fix today's issues, but tomorrow's and the years after. And I truly believe it. It's not just words. I encourage my children to be first responders. They grew up at the fire station. They grew up on ambulances. And yes, there's inherent dangers, but there's inherent dangers with anything. But how many careers, professions are there that more often than not, you can make somebody's worst day, their best. And people always go, well, what was your worst call? And I think that's independent with people. I think it sometimes has to do with what aspect they are in their life, what their personal back experience is. But I can honestly say after doing this for over 26 years, some of my worst calls are actually my best calls because they taught me more than a book or somebody telling me a story ever could, because I was able to organically, like I said, walk through it. And Do you get scuffed up sometimes? Absolutely. But it makes you stronger, more resilient. And a lot of times we think scuffed up and we think hardened. I think it's quite the opposite. The day I stop caring about my patients, or the day that I think I've seen it all and done it all and I'm not learning, then that's the day I don't need to be there, because I'm doing a disservice to myself, my community, and my family. So
Yeah. So you've obviously been that EMS chief. You've had, sometimes challenging individuals in your agency. And one of the things you talked about is, who's Murphy? I think we all know who Murphy is, right? But who's your Murphy?
Well, so I'm going to be a little bit honest. I always say Murphy was a medic, and Murphy was an asshole. And Murphy's that employee that you just want to get rid of. They show up late. They always have an excuse. They they seem like they're more of a problem. You don't care how much money you've spent on Murphy. It doesn't matter how much schooling you've sent them to. You just want them to go away and ruin somebody else's day. But the reality is, there are going to always be sometimes Murphys that just are Murphys. They're just, this isn't meant for them. Their culture doesn't fit up. Their value system doesn't line up with, because you have to have values. You have to have morals and you have to have ethics. If you don't, we don't need you. I know that sounds cold, but it's true. I want somebody with ethics, values, and morals taking care of my family. And if I expect that, I feel that I owe that to somebody else's family. But Murphy sometimes isn't the problem. Sometimes Murphy is the cancer. They are the byproduct of a bigger and deeper problem within your organization and agency. And when you get rid of Murphy, maybe Murphy was actually a godsend.
Trying to tell you something,
trying to
as an
help you.
organizational chief.
So exactly. So instead of just trying to write off Murphy and send Murphy down the road, before it gets to that point, hopefully you have some checks and measures, but sometimes it doesn't, because there are things that are missed. We're busy. We don't mean to let things slide, especially bigger organizations, but even small ones. We have a worldwide shortage of first responders.
We do.
And we can't lose the good ones.
Yeah.
And then we also need to make sure we foster that growth process for the next generation. And people's expectations and the reality sometimes coincide. And sometimes what somebody thinks is reality really isn't. But sometimes your Murphy's helping you. So instead of getting rid of Murphy, why don't you sit Murphy down? And maybe not in an office setting, maybe a one-on-one, non-confrontational, just have coffee or tea or have a soft drink, or, hey, let's go for a ride, and not think, oh, we're going to the office.
Yeah.
And then have an honest conversation, and maybe they are the bad apple. But I think if you actually sit and talk to Murphy before you have an exit interview, and if you don't do exit interviews, you're doing your department a disservice. And a lot of exit interviews you typically get, oh, I love you all, and it's BS. Sometimes it's true, but sometimes they just tell you because they don't want a bad name, or you get this slaughter where the sky wasn't blue enough and the grass wasn't green. But there's a lot of steps you can have before an exit interview that could be so beneficial, not just to your organization, but to EMS as a whole, because that person's going to take what you train them and either take it somewhere else and foster it, or they're going to taint a bad picture of EMS and let it spread like cancer. Oh, you don't want to be a first responder. Oh, the best advice you could give a new medic, and you hear, don't do it. Well, I don't say that. I'm just as excited as I was the first day that I got to go on an ambulance on my first call, and you're so eager to go and you're so excited. And I wish everybody had that. Are there days that are bad? Absolutely. But I don't think if you didn't have those bad days, you wouldn't understand the joyous days. I mean, like I was saying, one of my worst calls, her mom got killed. She's the only child. I put this child that's scared to death on a helicopter, and she was 7 and she lived. I was there when she graduated from high school 10 years later, and she's now a doctor.
That must be an uplifting moment for you, for everybody.
So when people talk about your worst calls, that was one of my worst calls.
Right.
because I've never seen somebody burn to death. Unfortunately, I have since many times.
Sure.
But we don't always understand the impact that others get. Like I was saying in the keynote, when I was 7, our house caught fire. I remember it from a totally different vantage point than somebody who's 52. But at 52, I still remember like it was yesterday what those first responders did and how they treated my family. And I didn't have an expectation of how they should. But now, after working with multiple agencies all across the U.S., I realized they didn't have to. The small things matter. And a lot of times we think we need the best equipment, the best truck, the most expensive. And don't get me wrong, those things are always nice. But it's free to be nice. And it's free to be compassionate. And it's free to care. And if I could teach that, I could teach ALS all day long. I can teach BLS all day long. But 94% of our patients, per statistics, either are too sick or not emergent enough that they're going to live or die without our care. But 94%, those are the ones that are going to remember that you locked the door for grandma. They're the ones that remember that when you took somebody to the hospital, that you made sure that you had their car keys. They're going to be the ones that, one of my partners one day made a bed for a little lady because she fell and broke her hip making the bed. Mm-hmm. And while we had her in the ambulance, when the firefighters went back in and made the bed, or cleaning up the scene so that the family doesn't have to come look at the suicide, washing down the sidewalk. Little things, I've said this before, a full arrest, if you actually work, it's not cheap, if you actually put the dollar amount to it. But it takes 5 to 10 minutes longer to know that you mentally, physically, and that family knows you did everything in your power to do the right thing. And if you can't talk to a family in that situation, that's okay. But make sure there's somebody on your team who can.
Yep.
And that's usually my job. Being a JP, I'm pretty good at being the last responder. But I will tell you some of the things I talked about in a keynote about losing my husband and losing my dad within 8 days of each other. One of the first calls I took when I came back was to a full arrest on my day off. I showed up just to help them, and it happened to be during spring break, of all things. There was a break, family's there, grandma's there with the grandchildren. They went to get lunch, they came back. Husband is on the floor, not breathing, CPR started. We're working him, it's not looking good. I asked the lead medic, the captain, I said, do you mind? I said, I could probably relate differently. And I walked her through it. And people need to be engaged in their family's care. And patients who have family members present tend to get better care. But she, to this day, knows that we didn't only take care of her husband, but we made sure the grandchildren were taken care of in another room. We made sure she was taken care of. And no, that's not typically in an EMT book that you read, but we need to work a lot more on the HC, the human care. That's where I think we have a deficit. But HC is something that we don't have to be medics, paramedics, advanced EMTs. You don't have to be a firefighter. You just have to be a good person.
Right.
And that's where we need to change the culture.
In the UK, we called it BSM, bedside manner. You had to be able to communicate with everybody about everything within the realm of the call that you're involved in.
The golden rule that you learn in kindergarten: be nice, treat people like you want to be treated. The biggest takeaway.
Yep.
I get asked all the time, what's your one advice? That's it.
Just be nice. Right.
Just be nice, treat people with dignity and respect, treat them like you want your family treated. And if you do that, the rest of the stuff typically will fall into place. We are becoming so to a point, technology is just crazy, but technology cannot hold a hand.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Technology.
There's a good quote.
Technology cannot look somebody in the eye. Technology can't say, ma'am, are you worried about miscarriage?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Miscarriage, grandma's flipping out. Nobody's understanding why grandma's flipping out. They're thinking she's flipping out because their daughter just had a baby that was fetal demise. I said, no, she's flipping out because she's Catholic and the baby needs to be baptized. And she's worried that that baby's not going to be baptized. I said, So you poor grandma said, "Are you worried about this?" She goes, "Yes." I said, "We will make sure your baby's baptized." The little things.
The little things, absolutely.
Call in help.
And that was a major takeaway for me listening to you today. That the little things are the things that are observed on the most and remembered the most. And it sounds kind of counterintuitive because of the big actions we do, whether it's defibrillation or extraction, but actually it's those minor things. And you are absolutely right. But people remember just that one or two things: the lawn or the making the bed, etc.
So
Absolutely.
when you're in the hospital, if you want to know what's going on in your hospital, ask housekeeping. Housekeeping talks to everybody. Patients will not remember that you worked your butt off for 45 minutes to restart their heart or put tourniquets on them or whatever, but they will remember that you tucked their feet in with a blanket underneath it or you put socks on their feet. They'll remember that you just prayed with them if they wanted to. Now, I know everybody's different. I'm not trying to get religion into this, but the reality is it's part of care. You got to treat patients with dignity and respect. And we live in a world that we see it all over the news where so-and-so's misbehaving or doing things that are poorly for patient care. But the reality is that's the exception. We need to harp on the reality. The reality is more often than not, those things are happening, the good things. Should we condone bad things? Absolutely not. But we can take them and learn from them and try to never have them be repeated again. We learn from our mistakes, and if we're not learning from our mistakes, we're going to repeat them again and again.
That's an amen to that. Now, of course, you are the keynote for not just the one ABC 360 conference. There are 3 throughout the year in different locations. And of course, folk can catch you where next?
I'm going to be in Clearwater, Florida in June. I don't have the exact dates. I do have them on my planner. It sounds like it's going to be awesome. I've been to Florida many times, but I've never been to Clearwater. My message is the same. It's always a little bit different. I try to engage the audience. I hope you felt that way. I called people out. Don't show up if you don't want to be part of the game.
Oh, we all had to stand up and introduce ourselves to the person behind me. Met a wonderful person from Georgia who I never thought I'd speak to at all. So that was fantastic. So yes, that's part and parcel of your delivery.
Well, and I think we sometimes think, well, I only need to stay with my little group. And you're doing a disservice when you stay with your own team. And then people go like, well, they're all across the United States. How could they help? I said, well, sometimes you have a question that you don't want to feel stupid asking somebody. Or maybe if your area, like where I live right now in Texas, we're under fire. I mean, we have multiple large fires. We have state resources coming in. I left there. My children, my son is working on the fire. My daughter-in-law is directing traffic. My daughter herself and my mother-in-law.
So you're all in.
We're all in. We have ownership, but there are neighbors. But the reality is when you're having a natural disaster, your neighbor probably is too. And sometimes like COVID, maybe you need a protocol for something that nobody ever had one for. And instead of reinventing the wheel, you can reach out and call this director or call that. So on my LinkedIn profile, I have connections all over the world. People that I'm not qualified to wash their car for will send me messages on LinkedIn and ask me my advice on things. And I'm not the smartest person, and I know some really smart people, but I am an honest person. And I will always do what I can to promote first responders, make sure that they come home at the end of the day, make sure that they provide the best care for their families and their communities. And like I said earlier, you don't deserve, that's maybe I should say, you don't deserve to take care of somebody else's family if you don't take care of your own, because somebody else's family expects you to treat them like if they are theirs, because they are not a number on a PCR. They're somebody's member of their community and they're their everything. And I think that's a very important policy. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't like working where I know the people. I know it's hard sometimes, but I'm going to tell you, when I walk into the grocery store and I see somebody, I don't hide. Because no matter what the outcome is, I did everything in my power. I used every tool in my toolbox to take care of them, and they know that too. And that's true ownership.
And it's what we do for a living. So ABC 360 still has another event in June. Links in the show notes. I'm going to put the LinkedIn for Miss Catherine here, Chief Catherine, Judge Catherine here in the show notes so you can reach out and get in touch as well. And so from that, let's go to a break.
Thank you.
Lexipol empowers first responders and public servants to best meet the needs of their residents safely and responsibly. Serving more than 2 million public safety and government professionals in over 8,000 agencies and municipalities, Lexipol offers a range of solutions that includes policies, training, behavioral health resources, news and analysis, and grant assistance services for law enforcement, fire and rescue, EMS, local government, and other agencies dedicated to public safety. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's LEXIPOL.com.
Okay, and we're back. Please make sure that you like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from, or indeed your podcast. So we're on Apple Podcast and everywhere. We're also over on YouTube. Of course, I have a returning guest here, been on the show, not a first-time listener, not a first-time caller. Doug Wolfberg is back, and the topic we're going to talk about, obviously, is the how we work with the police. Obviously, some of the detailed cases that we've gotten into over the years that you've explained. We've both interviewed each other before. We've both written about this. You actually put me on to the Elijah McClain defense lawyers. That was an amazing and actually very well received podcast that we did at EMS One. So thank you for that. But actually, there are 10 lessons in all of this, Doug, and I want to do a quick fire round. And so I've got the magic book here where I wrote down these 10 lessons.
I'm ready.
Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Good. So Doug's 10 top takeaways when working in and around the police with patients, etc. Here we go. You ready? Number 1.
Yes.
Collaborate with scenario-based training.
Yeah, the idea here, folks, is to try to build muscle memory for how to best advocate for and protect patients in hectic, chaotic scenes where law enforcement are barking orders and there's all kinds of chaos going on. To keep that patient focus, it's a muscle we have to build. And doing scenario-based training in those to prepare for those chaotic circumstances so we know exactly how to respond to best advocate for our patients.
That was a great answer. Let's keep going. Number 2, we have a duty to access the patient.
Yeah, so in law enforcement scenes, if a person's in custody, sitting in the back of a patrol car or in handcuffs and we can't access and assess them, we have a duty to the patient. We're not there to help the police. We're there to advocate and treat the patient. And if law enforcement is preventing or impeding or delaying access, we need to be seen and heard on those body cam videos advocating for that access.
Patient assessments are foundational.
You know, if we're going to give somebody a sedative, we're going to give them ketamine, if we're going to restrain them, that all has to be in the interest of patient care. If we don't have a valid assessment and a cop just says, give them ketamine, we have no clinical foundation for a medical intervention. It can't be to assist in restraining a person. It has to be for a medical purpose. Everything we do or don't do starts with a patient assessment.
I think this is a really important one. EMS cannot subordinate judgment to law enforcement.
Yeah, so that's an extension of the last one. What it means is that we, if a police officer says, give this SOB, some juice and put him to sleep. Yep. Okay, officer, that might be what the patient needs, but we're first going to do an assessment and figure out if clinically that's the right thing.
Which is your next point, that EMS and law enforcement must stay in their lanes.
Yeah, so, it's just as wrong for police to ask EMS to give a specific drug or do a certain thing. We presented cases where EMS asked the police, put this guy in handcuffs or, do this. Police have their standard of care. We have ours. We should stay in our lane. They should stay in theirs. But then we should collaborate for the best outcome for the patient.
Okay, I'm rewording this, but the clarity of custodial status. Is this person under arrest or not?
That's right. Sometimes it's unclear. The police are there. Person may even be in handcuffs, but are they actually in police custody? The reason EMS needs clarity in that is that may determine who we're taking certain direction from. That person's not free to leave. If they're under arrest, they can't refuse care, right? So that's a foundational clarification we have to make in these law enforcement situations.
Indeed. Now, if the patient is in handcuffs, what do we ask the cops to do?
Come with or release the cuffs.
Right.
I mean, if they're in handcuffs, we need the ability to remove those cuffs immediately if the patient's condition requires it. If the police aren't willing to accompany us during transport, cuff's got to come off, and then we need to use soft restraints or whatever was in the EMS tool bag at that point.
Okay, you made this point elegantly this morning. EMS needs to practice patient-centered advocacy. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so this is something I started calling performative EMS, and I've written an article about that. It means that all of these interactions with the police are likely to be recorded on body cam videos or other bystander videos. That stuff's going to be evidence.
Yeah.
And if the people with the badge and the gun ultimately prevent us from treating the patient, at minimum, I want to hear those videos expressing patient advocacy. Officer, that person looks ill and injured. We need to get to them so we can treat them, take them to the hospital. No way, they're going to jail, right? Okay, well, best we can do is advocate, but I want those body cam videos in the next cases to show EMS not just acquiescing to the police, but advocating for the patient.
Okay, so this next point is actually leads on from that, and I want to sort of come back at you with, I'm going to slow it down a little bit because I've got a point I want to make too. Let the camera show you working.
Yeah, that's right. Let the cameras show that we're doing assessments, that we're bringing the tools of the trade to the patient's side, that we're not just walking in and, haphazardly doing X or Y, that it's a methodical, foundational assessment and treatment, and let the videos show that.
So if you caught my interview with Shana and Mike, the Elijah McClain defense lawyers, one of the things they talked about was allied to this, Doug, and that's the fact that in EMS, we're really good at looking stoic because sometimes we come to the patient, we're assessing, I'm doing it now, right? We're assessing, we're thinking, we're looking into the problem, we're trying to work out what to do next. We take our course of action stoically. You said still looking at the floor. But when you're watching that on a body-worn camera, it looks like we are not paying attention. We're not getting on with it. We're not taking part or playing. And what they said to me was, you have to actually now, and it's a Wolfbergism, you have to actually be performative.
That's right. And, the fact is that when these things are recorded on body cam, if a case goes south and there's a patient death or a death in custody, a prosecutor is ultimately a human, is going to look at these and say, did you act in good faith and do everything you could to advocate for the patient, right? So in those cases, if the video shows they did do their best and they acted with empathy and they acted with concern for the patient, it's going to be very hard for a prosecutor to charge you. Well, now we've got several EMTs and medics who have now been criminally charged who look neglectful on those videos, who look, they're just filled with antipathy. They're being hostile to the patient. They're just standing milling around. They're not acting and advocating. The body cam videos are going to make that an easy call for a prosecutor when we're not acting in the best interest of the patient.
Also, thank you. Brilliant segue. Also catch our discussion with the good folk at New Orleans on their body-worn camera program. And as we know from the January the 1st event, not only did that body-worn camera catch the clinical treatment stuff, but obviously caught the environment in which they're around and the professionalism with which they display. So there's something in that. Final one, Doug. EMS agencies need to update and revise their protocols and also obviously train with their law enforcement partners.
That's right. And in terms of the protocols, like for example, one term that has fallen out of favor very quickly is excited delirium. And there are other terms for it, but we need to make sure our protocols are keeping up with best evidence and practices. And by the way, on that point, to me, there's a lot in a name, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if we call it agitated delirium or excited, whatever it is we call it. If it's just a pretext to do bad behavior, I mean, you can call it pink, funny, fuzzy bunny slipper syndrome. But if all you do is say, yeah, this guy's got pink, fuzzy bunny slipper syndrome, so we're going to give him ketamine.
PFBS.
Thank you. Right. Then it doesn't matter what you call it. It still has to have that assessment to make the intervention valid. So nomenclature is important, but at the end of the day, whatever intervention we do has to be based on an assessed, documented condition.
So some great answers from Doug there. Of course, we've both actually created and produced a lot of content on these issues, mostly by me listening to you and writing them up. Thank you for being the source of this. But before we go, just talk a little bit about ABC 360, about XI, where we are today. And of course, there's more coming up.
That's right. So right now we're in Paris, Las Vegas, holding the second of our 3 annual ABC 360 reimbursement and compliance conferences, and XI, which is short for the PWW Executive Institute, which is a leadership and compliance program. That's a pre-conference workshop. ABC 360 is a 2-day conference, and the next place we'll be giving this conference is in Clearwater, Florida in early June, which is a great destination. literally right on the beach. The hotel sits right on the beach, and it's always a lovely time. But great content, cutting edge stuff. And we do NAC courses, certifications as pre-conference workshops, certified ambulance coder, certified ambulance financial officer, and other certifications that are available as pre-conference courses. So that's where we are right now.
Fantastic. Great. So the links to all the articles we've talked about, all the podcasts we've talked about, obviously ABC 360 that we've just talked about will be in the show notes. So look down there. For the moment, Doug, thank you, sir.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you, mate. So that's it. That's another EMS One-Stop, this time on scene here at the Paris, Las Vegas for ABC 360 and the Executive Institute with PWW. Thank you to my guests, Catherine Kuhlmann, and of course to the ever-present Doug Wolfberg. I've been Rob Lawrence. Please make sure that you like and subscribe. And until next time, bye for now.